I don't even know what this is. I don't ever remember looking upon the face of this book. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Read, Share, Repeat, where we discuss books from the perspective of an aspiring fantasy author. Me, Carrie Share. And today we are doing a fun little video, a TBR tier ranking. That's right, I've put together a list of many of the books that I own. I say many because it would be impossible to do this with all the books that I own and have not read yet. We are going to do a little tier ranking of these unread books on my TBR. And like I said, there are some parameters. First, I stuck only to my physical TBR. I did not go through my ebooks and audiobooks because that would be almost 200. And I also limited these choices to the most recent book in the series that I haven't read. So if I've read the first book, I will use the second book, but not the third book, because I have The Expanse in there. I've got all of Robin Hobb in there. So in order to keep this from being too time prohibitive, I figured let's limit it to just these. Unfortunately, just these still ended up being 67. We are in it for the long haul. So without further ado, let's just get right into the tiers. So first up, we have Why Haven't I Read This Yet? And these are books that for whatever reason I just haven't gotten to yet, even though I believe I will like them and I am really looking forward to reading them. Orange is Tell Me More, and these are books that I'm interested in. These are ones I have kind of pinged mentally as ones that I want to get to soon, but am either not completely familiar with the plot or the tags or the author to really push it into that top tier. The next one down is I Don't Know Her. These are books where I just don't know anything about them. I would not be able to pick them out of a lineup if I did not have a list of my own library. The yellow tier is Too Spoopy, and these are books that I am either intimidated by or books that I'm afraid I won't like, and so I haven't picked them up for those reasons. And lastly, About to Be Unhauled, and these are books that I probably picked up without really knowing anything about them and as bookshelf filler. And now that I am no longer needing bookshelf filler, I don't feel a connection to them or feel like I need them. Okay, so like I said, I've got 67 of these bad boys. Let's get straight into it. First one is A Letter to the Luminous Deep. I really don't know her, but I am curious, so I am interested in learning more because I really want this coming summer to be all about nautical and seafaring and mermaids and underwater fairs. I have several books tagged that kind of fall into this realm of books that I do want to get into during the summer and like really ocean vibes. Next up, A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher, and she goes right into Why Haven't I Read This Yet? Although I do have a video concept that I plan to film in April with this book. So I'm hoping that I have time to squeeze in the books relevant to make sure that this one gets read soon. I'm a big T. Kingfisher fan. I've never rated anything that she's written less than a 3, and those 3s are really just because the genre wasn't for me. Those were her horror books and then one of the romanticities I wasn't a huge fan of, but I love her writing style. I love her characters, and I know that I can pick up any T. Kingfisher book off the shelf sight unseen and will have a good time. Next up is Abaddon's Gate, and this is the third book in the Expanse series, and this one is a little bit too spoopy for me right now because I haven't yet decided if I want to go back and reread the first 2 books to annotate them as part of my annotation project. They're both very long, and I liked the first one, but I didn't love it, and POV characters were the primary reason I didn't love it, and I don't know that I would say I'm excited to reread it, but I also know that the longer it's been almost a year since I read the second one. I'm getting further and further and further, which would just mean that I would have to reread them anyway. So time may end up making this choice for me. Next, we have Ancillary Justice by Ann Leckie. I don't know her. I do a little bit. I actually know her more than I know the other ones because I know that Reagan over at Peruse Project read it and I watched all of her reading. Okay, well, I don't know what that was about, but my screen recorder just failed. So we were talking about Ancillary Justice. I don't know her. I know her a little bit. because of Reagan at Peru's project. She read the whole series, so I do know it's a sci-fi story about a person who was part of a hive mind, like a collective, and then has since separated and now has to figure out how to live as a singular person while also solving some kind of mystery or figuring out what's going on with the Empire, something like that. That's about all I know, though. I'm not feeling particularly drawn to learn more just yet, but that's what we know about this one. The next is And the Sky Bled. I know zero about this. This is a book that came in a book box, and that's it. That's all I know. Blood of Elves. This is the first official published book in the Witcher series, and that is a little bit too spoopy. Just a little bit. I want to. I think I'll probably like it, although a lot of older white male fantasy hasn't really been working for me lately, so maybe I wouldn't like it. I'm not sure. Forged by Blood. Tell me more. Is it? See, this could go in either tell me more, I don't know her, or too spoopy, because I am intrigued by the African-inspired setting, but it is a YA, but I also don't know anything else about it, so I don't know her. I think that's where it's gonna stay. I need to know more before I put it either in tell me more or too spoopy. I know one thing that is a draw, and I know one thing that's a drawback. Foul Days. I don't know her either. I know this is Witcher inspired with a female main character, and that's it. This is another book box book. Gideon the Ninth is at the tippy top of why haven't I read this yet. In fact, I actually did start reading it sometime last year, but it was in the middle of a reading slump, and so it wasn't the book's fault. I just couldn't bring myself to be reading at the time. What I did manage to read of it, it was the first 100 pages or so, I did really like. So I know that I will like it, and it's actually on my TBR this month. I have video planned, so I have to get it read, so it's going to be prioritized really soon. Grave Empire is... this is a brand new book to my TBR, and I need to read the first trilogy. So that's too spoopy, because I need to read 3 books before I can even get to that one. Grim Curiosities, I know 0% about. I assume it has something to do with fairy tales based on the title alone, but that's all I know. Another book box book. Heart of the Sun Warrior. I almost need another category. This is too spoopy because I'm afraid I won't like it. I read Daughter of the Moon Goddess late last year and didn't like it as much as I wanted to. I thought the writing was the pacing of the story was very bizarre. Just aspects of the writing style didn't jive with me, but I had already bought the sequel. And then Immortals came, which is not a direct sequel, but it is in the same setting in a fairy loot box. So now what am I supposed to do? I think I am committed to reading it, but it is too spoopy because I don't think that I'll like it. Next up is Kushiel's Dart. This is almost a classic. I think if you're 20 or 25 years old in fantasy, you're a classic, personally. This is going, and why haven't I read this yet? Because I have tried numerous times. I had the mass market paperback, I bought it on Kindle, and then I replaced my mass market paperback with one of the nicer, newer reprints, and I still haven't read it. It is very long, to be fair, but I do think I'll like it. It's right up my alley. It's political inspired fantasy. It's sexy. It's dark. I think I'll like it. What I have read of it, I think I did like. I have no excuse. Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, and this is too spoopy because I don't think that I'll like it. I learned last year that cozy stories don't really work for me. It turns out I am a killjoy and I need more plot than that. And from what I have heard of Legends and Lattes, this is peak no plot, just vibes. After attempting some Becky Chambers and a few other things, the whimsical, very light, very easy, very low stakes, it doesn't work for me. And I found my copy at Half Price Books for $6. And so I was like, yeah, of course. I cannot pass up a smash hit for $6, even though it might not be a hit with me. I have since tried to convince my 12-year-old daughter to read it, which may be a mistake. This may be on the chopping block in the next year or so, if I haven't read it. Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo is going in Tell Me More. And that is largely because I just read The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo and was surprised by how much I liked it after kind of struggling a little bit with Six of Crows. I know, unpopular opinion, it is what it is. I can tell you more about it, but every time I do, I talk about it, I seem to get in trouble. Now, I do know that Ninth House does feature some of the things I did not like about Six of Crows, primarily the storytelling method, including copious flashbacks. But, like I said, I was surprised by how much I liked The Familiar, and so I am intrigued to try Leigh Bardugo again and see if Six of Crows is the anomaly. Next up is Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. And I read Divine Rivals last year during the marketing boycott and really liked it. Especially since it was a YA, and I don't really get on with YA anymore. So that was a surprise. I do think there were some elements of it that were a little silly. The ending, I wasn't tremendously thrilled about, but it did leave on a pretty interesting cliffhanger, so I do need to read it. I just do need to get it off my list. Also the fact that it's a duology and it's very low commitment, like there's really no reason to avoid it for this long. Next up is Fathom Folk by Eliza Chan, and as much as I want to say tell me more, I really just don't know her. I know nothing about it. I think there's a lot of fantastical creatures in this book. We have Scarlet Odyssey, and even though I have read the back of this book, I actually drew it, I think sometime last year as a random draw for my Mimic and didn't get to it. I really don't know her. I just don't. I know it's another African-inspired setting, and I know there's something to do with magic. That's it. Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb, and this is... Why the hell haven't I read this yet? Because I loved Assassin's Apprentice. I gave it 5 stars when I read it. It was like 5 or 6 years ago now. Loved it. Really, really loved it. And I did buy the second book and never read it. And there's really no excuse for it. The problem is now it's been too long and now I need to reread Assassin's Apprentice. I mean, I need to anyway to annotate them. It's really ridiculous that it's been this long. And no matter how many times I say I'm going to reread Assassin's Apprentice, I just haven't gotten around to that either. Long Live Evil. This, I believe, was a fairy loot. I can't remember, but it came in one of my book boxes, and I think I'm probably gonna unhaul it, to be honest with you. I don't know anything about it. I've read the back copy a couple of times. I don't know. This just doesn't seem like it's for me. I'll have to see what version I have though. It must be a book box book for sure, but I can't remember what book box it came in. Next up is Servant of Earth. This is, I don't know her. I know it looks nice on my shelf, and I know it's a romantasy. Shorefall by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the sequel to Foundry Side, which I gave 5 stars last year when I read it, and I immediately told my best friend about it, and then he read it, and then he continued reading it, and I was like, wait, you can't tell me anything about the sequel because I haven't read it yet, and then I never read it. And now I do feel like I need to annotate them. I do want to go back and reread Foundry Side, but do I want to, should I just continue with the series and then go back and do a complete reread later? I don't know. But also Foundry Side is one of those books that I loved so much. Like, I'm scared of how the second one will make me feel. Like, I was this way with the 5th season. It made me feel so many things that it intimidates me from reading the next one. Speaking of sequels, we also have The Liar's Knot, and this is a little too spoopy because I read the first one last year, liked it. I would say really liked it, not quite loved it, but really liked it on ebook. And then I found The Liar's Knot, which is the second one, at half price. But I don't own a copy of the first one physically, and I would like to. I think I like this, like what I read enough to justify buying a physical copy, and if I do that, then I'm gonna have to annotate it. It is a little spoopy, and they're also all 600 pages, so that's another reason. Then we have The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake, and I really don't know her. I think it's Dark Academia. This was definitely a bookshelf filler, but I do want to read it at some point. She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan is going in too spoopy because I have heard a couple of things that make me a little bit nervous. Dear God, do you hear that? There have been a couple of things that made me a little bit nervous. First of all, that the fantasy elements are so minuscule that this could really be classified as historical fiction, not really fantasy. And historical fantasy is not my favorite. I do prefer secondary worlds. I will read historical fantasy. I actually feel like I've read a lot lately. But also that this does tend to be kind of dark. And I have said many times that I do not like to be depressed in my spare time. I read The Poppy War several years ago and I couldn't continue. That was too depressing, even though I felt like it was a good book. I feel like if I reread The Poppy War now, I probably could continue, but it just asks a lot of my mental like energy to read a book that I know will depress me, and sometimes I just don't have it. Sorcery and Small Magics. I am putting this in Tell Me More. I'm kind of feeling drawn to queer romantasy right now. Maybe it's just because I've struck out so many times with male-female couples in romantasy that I am desperately searching for something that'll speak to me, and maybe queer romantasy will do it. I heard it's very cute and a little bit light, and I know it's based on music magic. Love that. I'm interested. I want to get to that one sometime this year. Our Infinite Fates. This one is so hard because I literally just unhauled it like last week. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not really excited about it. I think I just bought it because I had to pick something in order to pick like add-ons for book of the month, and I wanted another book of the month book. That wasn't one of like the monthly picks. Does that make sense? If you know book of the month, you can tell me more. The way I understand it is that you pick one of the monthly picks, and then once you do that, then you can add on other books that were not the monthly picks. Anyway, so I picked Our Infinite Fates, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm probably gonna unhaul it before I read it. It's very short, so I could just go ahead and read it, but why would I when there are 60 other books I could be reading? Dragon Fruit by Makia Lucier, and this is going on Tell Me More. This is, right up there with A Letter to the Luminous Deep in terms of ocean faring, ocean-related sea stuff for the summer. I definitely want to get to this one. I wanted to read it last year. I love the cover, and I know there is like a dragon egg involved, so possibly a dragon book. I would love to like a dragon book as well. Stone and Sky by Z.S. Diamante. This is I don't know her. This came in Caffeine and Legends book box last year. One of the first, I think, or maybe it was even the year before that, I don't remember, but couldn't pick her out of a lineup. It's got a griffin on the cover, but when you go to like the Goodreads page, it says dragons. I mean, if there's a griffin, there's likely to be dragons. I mean, like, I just found it funny that it said dragons, but there's very clearly a griffin. The Court of Broken Knives by Anna Smith Spark, and I don't know her, but I would like to. This one has been on my TBR for a while. This is another situation that I picked up like a bookshelf filler at half price, but something about the title makes me hope that it's got palace intrigue in it. One of my favorite things. I would like to learn more and eventually get around to it because it has been it's one of like my oldest physical copies. Like in terms of I've had it the longest on my physical TBR. The Gods Below by Andrea Stewart, I know who Andrea Stewart is. I did read the first Bone Shard book and thought it was mid. At the time, I was like, yeah, I could read the second one, and then just forgot about it, to be honest with you. Road of Bones. I do have this one as Tell Me More because I am curious. I am very curious about it. I don't know much about it. I think it's like Nordic or Viking inspired, which I'm cool with, but something about the artwork is drawing me in, and I am like intrigued by it. And then I also just picked up the sequel, so maybe that's what's making me think about it more lately. The Scorpion and the Night Blossom. I'm putting this in Tell Me More because I just hauled this out of my Fairy Loot subscription, and I said in that video, which I will link above and below, that I want a Chinese mythology book that has court intrigue. I want a story of the immortals that has court intrigue. And this sounds like that could be closer to it than what Daughter of the Moon Goddess gave me. The problem is that like Goodreads suggested that this was YA. Now Goodreads is not always accurate, I have found, but nor is Fairy Loot. I signed up for the Fairy Loot adult box and I have gotten YA in that box before. So I'm a little bit nervous, but I do so want a Chinese mythology palace intrigue book. Please. The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. And this one is a little too spoopy because like I've heard so many great things, and I know that it's a weird book that I feel like if I'm the one who doesn't like it, does that make me dumb? Honestly, I do think that I'll probably really like it. And I went out of my way to buy it last year and then never read it, so I've got to get that read. Stormcaller by Tom Lloyd is definitely on my list to unhaul. This is another bookshelf filler book that I got from half price. And then when I was looking it up today, I found that it was like also from like 20 years ago. And like I said earlier, I am just not feeling super enthusiastic about white male fantasy from the early 2000s. It just has a very distinct flavor that I haven't really gotten on with of late. These Burning Stars by Bethany Jacobs. I don't know her. I know it's a sci-fi. Hunger of the Gods. This is going in Tell Me More, but with a caveat that I do need to reread The Shadow of the Gods first. First to annotate it, and second as a refresher. I listened to it primarily on audio last year. Because of my audio processing issues, I do feel like I didn't get the full experience. And then as I got towards the climax, I realized I had also bought it on ebook. So then I just finished reading it on ebook. But I did like it. I actually really liked it. And I want to annotate it, not just because I own it physically now, but because I think I'll get more out of it if I do. The Witch's Heart. I'm going to be honest with you. I think it may get unhauled. I just don't feel drawn to it despite owning it. And I think, own a ebook copy, so I could unhaul my physical copy and not close the door on the book forever. But I just have never felt drawn to it despite owning it in two forms. The Courting of Bristol Keats is too swoopy because I don't think I'll like it. This is another fae romantasy, and when you hear from people who actually do like those stories that it isn't great, unfortunately, this is a Fairy Loot book. I may have to give up on Fairy Loot, guys, but the problem is that they have so many sales for books that are not part of the monthly boxes, but you have to be subscribed in order to get the pre-sales or have access to the sales. So I'm getting these books that I'm not excited about, but at the same time, they also have books that I am excited about, but anyway. The Foxwife is, I don't know her, other than that it is Chinese mythology, but not the immortals, more like the fox spirit and historical. The Raven Tower by Anne Leckie, not a single clue what that's about. The Last Shield, same thing. What is this about? This is a book box book that I see it, I'm like, okay, sure. The Hexologists, I think this is gonna go in Tell Me More. I did read part of this book last year as an ARC, and it had a little bit of the whimsical style storytelling that I have now come to associate with cozy books, in that it's the style I don't particularly gravitate towards or like, but I have since read Senlin Ascends by the same author and did really like it. So I'm willing to give this book another shot. And the concept is just so funny and intriguing in a sort of goofy way that I want to read it more. If I can just get over that hesitancy about the writing style, then I think I may end up really enjoying it, but we'll see. Invasion of the Tearling, which is of course the sequel to Queen of the Tearling, is too spoopy because I need to reread Queen of the Tearling for my annotation project. And here's the thing, is I think I liked Queen of the Tearling because it was one of those books that just came to me at the right time. It is a little goofy. At one point, the narration mentions the Hobbit, so they're living in a secondary world, but apparently the secondary world, the inhabitants migrated from the real world. Somehow it was very vague, and that I felt was excessively goofy, but I ended up liking it. It just like I said, it just hit at the right time, and I'm afraid that if I reread it I won't like it as much, which doesn't bode well for the sequels. The Wolf and the Woodsman, I'm gonna put her in I don't know her for right now, because I don't, truly. I've heard many people talk about it positively, but not a ton about the plot. But I did read A Study in Drowning right at the beginning of this year and really liked it, and that made me more interested in Ava Reed's writing. So I'm not going to put it in Tell Me More just yet because I don't feel like it's on my radar in the immediate future, but definitely I am curious. So I'll put it at the top of I don't know her. Next up is The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence, and that is going to go in Why Haven't I Read This Yet? I pre-ordered this book because I loved Red Sister by Mark Lawrence so much. That book just was so profound to me that it made Mark Lawrence one of my favorite authors without having read anything else by him. I have since read 2 other books, but they're both in the same world, so take for that what you will. But I have heard good things about The Book That Wouldn't Burn, and it is set in a magical library. I feel very confident that I will like it, and again, I have really no excuse for not reading it. Same can be said for The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. The 5th season was one of the most perfect books I have ever read, and it instantly made me like want to read N.K. Jemison's backlist and full body of work. And then I just haven't. I finished the Broken Earth trilogy and I haven't read anything else by her, and I need to change that soon. The Night Ends with Fire by K.X. Song. I love phoenixes, first of all. Let me just say I do love phoenixes. I have one tattooed on my back. But I did read like the first like 10% of this book, maybe even more than that, maybe like 20%. And I didn't really love it. I didn't. It was going in a very obvious direction that so many young adult, new adult romances do. I didn't get tremendously far, but I could already kind of tell where this was going. And that sort of like dampened my enthusiasm. And also I don't know that I loved the writing either. I have the Fairy Loot version, of course I do, but I'm scared to pick it up again. We Free the Stars, which of course is the sequel to We Hunt the Flame, and I'm gonna put that in Tell Me More. I did buy both We Free the Stars and We Hunt the Flame physically recently because I read We Hunt the Flame I got it from the library, but I lollygagged and didn't read it fast enough, and my loan started to run out and I was speed reading through it, and I really felt like that negatively impacted my experience with the book. So I want to reread it and annotate it. I think that'll improve my experience. So We Free the Stars is going to Tell Me More because it's a duology, and I can mark a series off of my incomplete series lists by just reading both books. And that is like a hit of dopamine like you would not understand. The Foxglove King, I don't know her, except that I do. I read a little bit of it and DNF'd it. I got it from the library last year and DNF'd it. And then I found a copy at half price and was like, yes, please, for some strange reason. Here's the thing. Can you blame me for DNFing books when I was in the middle of a slump? Like, I DNF'd Gideon. So how do we know that The Foxglove King really wasn't that bad? How do we know? We don't know. So I don't know her. The West Passage by Jared Pachacek. I don't know her. I like the cover. The Year of the Witching. Tell Me More. With the caveat that I thought I was going to read it last year in October and didn't. And now I'm saying this year in October I'm going to read it. We'll see. But I do like the premise. I just don't know. I want to like horror, but I just don't think I have the right disposition to like horror. Does that make sense? I feel like to get the most out of horror, you need to feel the adrenaline, and I don't when I read it. I don't have enough, like I don't engage with the text and like you engage my imagination enough, I feel like, to get the most out of horror, which is really disappointing because I do want to like it. The Dragons of Deepwood Fen. I don't know her. I don't. Another book box book. Are you seeing a trend? Obviously, I'm getting a lot of books in my book boxes. I subscribe to Caffeine and Legends, Fairy Loot, and Book of the Month. Especially Caffeine and Legends, I get a lot of fantasy books that I know nothing about and often don't hear about from anyone else. Like, they're not getting a lot of buzz. So The Teller of Small Fortunes, I am actually going to put in Tell Me More, even though I've heard this is cozy. I don't know. At first I was like, oh no, I'm not going to get on with this book. This was like a immediate, like, maybe I should unhaul this. But I'm going to give it a chance. The plot summary does seem like it has a little bit more stakes than some of the other cozy books, but you could say that about some of the others too that I have not liked. So we'll see. When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. I have heard really, like, I don't know that I would say really positive, but I know nothing about what the plot is. But the thing is that it's super short. It's like very, very short. I could sit down in an afternoon and read it. I just haven't. The Golden Enclaves is going in Why Haven't I Read This Yet? And the truth is that I'm probably going to prioritize it next month and finish out that series. I was surprised by how much I liked A Deadly Education, and I liked The Last Graduate even more. And I am so intrigued to see how this one ends. The Phoenix King by Aparna Verma, and this is going to go and Tell Me More because, like I said, I love phoenixes, and I am very curious to see what this is about. I checked it out a few times from the library and let my loan lapse, and then I found it at Half Price Books, and it felt like serendipity because I'd never heard of this book anywhere else other than seeing it at the library. I picked it up. The Witch King, I don't know her. I do a little bit. I've heard vaguely the plot summary, but I just don't feel drawn to it, at least not at the moment. The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. Look, I have to be the only one on the planet who was not excited by The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, but look, in my defense, it was the year I was getting back really seriously into reading, and I was pitched that book as a fantasy. And maybe this is spoilers, but that book is in no way a fantasy. It is 100% contemporary. 0% fantasy elements other than like the kind of fairy tale like quality of the writing, but like nothing actually fantastical happens in that book. 100% contemporary. Sorry if that's a spoiler, but it is. And I was disappointed by that. I felt like I'm sold a bill of goods. I read fantasy for a reason, and that book was not fantasy. And I think I probably was too harsh on it for that reason. The entire book I was waiting for something fantasy to happen. Nothing ever did. Now, to be fair, Roshani Chakshi's writing in that book, beautiful, stunning, gorgeous. So it's nothing to do with the writing itself or the quality of the writing or who I think Roshani Chakshi is as a writer. Like I said, it has everything to do with like being like bamboozled by the marketing. All of that to say, I think The Gilded Wolves is also YA. So there are two strikes against it, both my experience with the previous book and the YA. The Shadow of What Was Lost is too spoopy because it is lengthy. I also don't know her. I think it's Roman inspired. This author must really like his Roman inspired stories because also what The Will of the Many is. I also own it because the special edition came out and the consumerism got me, but I'm also super intimidated by that one too. A Song to Drown Rivers, tell me more. Although someone in my TikTok comments said they were a little bit disappointed by it, so that made me go, ooh. I have felt drawn to it since I got it and haven't found a way to put it on a TBR yet, so I am interested. Tell me more. Babel by R.F. Kuang. This one's tough. This one kind of transcends these categories because I am curious and like I do want to like read more R.F. Kuang after like my experience with the Poppy War, where the book was objectively good, but it made me so depressed that I could not carry on reading the series. But I'm also super intimidated by it. But that's not, well, okay. I'm too spoopy. It is. I am super intimidated by it. But I do know also that like it is likely that I will like it, but I am super intimidated by it. That is true. Daughters of Chaos? I don't even know what this is. I don't ever remember looking upon the face of this book. How it got into this list, I don't know. I'm sure I must own it, but I could not tell you where on my bookshelf it is. This must be a Fairy Loot or like a book box edition because I don't know what this is. I'm so sorry. Sorry to this man.
I hate to say it. I hope I don't sound ridiculous. I don't know who this man is. Sorry to this man.
Gods of Jade and Shadow. I don't know her, but I would like to. I think it's a YA though, but I do like Silvia Moreno Garcia's writing, at least from the one book that I read, Mexican Gothic. Really liked it, but I think it's a YA. City of Dusk. I don't know her. I did, and this is another one that have read a few chapters from the library, then let it lapse. Yeah. And then lastly, Bloodguard. I also don't know her. Although, if I'm being real honest, it could go into spoopy as well because it is a Red Tower book, which I have not had the greatest experience with. It's a romantasy, and I've heard some not so positive things. But for now, I don't know her because I could not tell you a single thing about the plot. And that's it. That is all 67 books for this video. I was going to say on my physical TBR, but that's not even accurate. All 67 books that I could read. I'm actually surprised that there are not as many unhauls. I thought this was going to be way longer. I am a little bit ashamed of this one right here. I should know more about the books that I own. But look, to be fair, a lot of these are my book box books. A lot of them. Some of them aren't. Some of them I have no excuse. I am a little bit ashamed that this one is so long, that there are so many in this one, because I should read books that I believe that I'll like. Why do I not prioritize them? The world may never know. And with that, thank you so much for watching. I so appreciate it. If you like my content and want to support the channel, please like and subscribe or consider leaving a comment down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know in the comments which one of this top row of books you think I should read first, apart from Gideon, because I'm definitely reading this one this month. And A Sorceress Comes to Call, I'm definitely reading that one next month. Almost definitely. Apart from that, which one of those books do you think I should read next? In my next video, I will have a reading vlog for you. I hope you look forward to it, and I will see you then. Bye.